Welcome, guys. Welcome to Travel Connections. Thank you so much for being here and being on Travel Connections with me for the first time.
Yeah, we're live. Fine.
This is absolutely amazing.
Live wire.
Very cool.
Welcome to my world. Welcome to my world.
We've been in your world, remember?
I do remember. My bad.
You are predating our world. So we've known each other for a super long time, and we've been on many trips together. But I have to say, this Morocco trip, correct me if I'm wrong, is our most ambitious, most adventurous trip to date.
I would say by far. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the way it came about was, I think you said, I ran into a friend who's putting this tour together. Anyone interested? And the adventurers said, sure, sounds great. I had no idea what we signed up for.
Actually, so I actually know I sleep with you, so I do know you.
Thank you.
I actually think your line was, who wants to ride camels in the Sahara with me?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it was interesting to have emphatic yeses across the board. That doesn't happen that quickly.
It doesn't. Well, I do think that this takes a very special individual to enjoy a trip like this. It is not for everyone. Yes or no?
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And, with our experience with at least us four and the stuff that we have done and the places we've gone, it seems like everybody does some homework. Everybody, plays a role and picks out things that they think and that think we'd like to do. And on this, we were kind of trusting somebody else through you, Suzanne.
Yeah.
And it turned out, a trip of this size, you have to have somebody like Cindy.
I know. Cindy Steffen of International Culinary Tours did a phenomenal job. We experienced things we never could have even dreamed existed. I'll let you talk. Crazy.
Yeah, I think to your point, just trying to pull this group together. How many people did you talk to who was like, it's not on my list, I'm not sure about it? The adventure, that spirit that you have to be able to do this, and then find someone who's got the connections down there. What you were able to get us access to and what Cindy then put together as itinerary was pretty phenomenal.
I do think it's interesting when you refer to past trips we've taken. One might say, hey, here's a historic site and I want to see that. One might say, hey, I read about this barbecue place. We got to try it, right? So we all have the ability, as Troy said, to go in and research where we're going. In this case, we had no idea what we're getting into. And it's just really cool. Very cool.
Very cool.
It's all I wanted to do is, for me, it was riding camels in the desert with Troy, Brad, and Craig. It was like, I think I could die and go home at that point because it was a dream to do these with these lifelong friends. We've known each other since we were kids. We kept saying, can you believe this? Can you believe this?
Look at where we are.
I know.
And the desert to me was amazing. It was I go to the desert here in California.
Right.
It's similar, but it's 1,000 miles by 3,000 miles. But not like 40 miles by 60 miles. So to get up on top of those dunes when we rode out there, especially that afternoon trip, I was like, the whole time I was going, oh my God, look, what? You can see the mountains way off in the distance. And it was just incredible. That was incredible.
Well, it was. And here's the funny thing I have in my notes here. I don't even know where to begin because we had so many adventures, so many experiences, mostly unexpected. We knew where we were going. I knew the names of the cities, but it didn't mean anything to me.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know what that meant. Oh, yay. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, you hear the term Marrakech, you hear the Sahara Desert, you just think, that's too overwhelming. How will I ever pull that off? And we did.
Right. Well, Marrakech, holy cow. Let's just start with Marrakech because that's where we began. And to walk down in the Medina through these markets with donkeys on carts and motorcycles and people and piles of spices and loud music. It was like, I felt like Indiana Jones was going to walk on set right then.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And all those little narrow passageways that we had to take to get to the riads where we were staying. Brad and I had a little adventure going to find the place where Dave and Karen were. After we got settled, we had to get over there and make sure they get checked in. And so we look up on the map. Okay, it's not that far. But then you realize you have to walk down like 4 or 5 alleyways. We kept thinking that they dead ended. Must have went down 2 or 3 at least. And we're like, oh, this is a dead end. Oh, this is a dead end. Finally, there's 2 guys working on a electrical on the side of one of these buildings. And we finally just looked at them and we showed them the address and where it was. And the guy goes, okay, hang on. So they finished what they were doing and they started walking and they walked us around. And I think he made like one wrong turn, but then we had gone down this one road or this one alley and he kept going what we thought was a dead end, which it wasn't. If you went all the way to the end, it turned left. And sure enough, we walked down there and there was the doorway, to this riad that we had got for them to stay at. We would have probably never found it.
No.
Well, and to Troy's point, I mean, we passed those guys 3 times and they kept looking at us like, who are the knuckleheads? I mean, because they can see, I mean, we've got the piece of paper in our hand. We walk by again. You can see them shaking their head. And Troy's being generous when they said, oh, there was no communication. I mean, they speak English. We didn't speak Arabic. We're pointing at maps. They sent us on our way. We come back and do the international shrug. Like, I don't know where we are. And the fact that they loaded up their equipment, they took the time and walked us to the place that we needed to go. It kind of ties back to this trip in the beginning when you talk to people and it was that safety issue. Are you going to be safe going to Morocco? Are you sure you should be going to a Muslim country? What are you thinking? Why would you do that? And the people could not have been nicer or more generous.
I was going to build on that. It's funny. So you look at Marrakech and you look at the old city, one of the oldest cities in the world, and surrounded by the newer city that's building out and modernizing. But when you're in that area and you're having the chaos around you, the donkeys, the motorcycles, the narrow streets, you see the snake charmer and all that thing happening. You also realize looking back that these people, it's so safe. They're so caring. And it kind of goes into the religion too. And we don't need to go deep into that. But when you start to think about just the respect in their religion, I think it answers, Brad, your point when people say, is it safe? I've heard that many times since I returned. Yeah, completely safe. And I like the message we received at the end of one of the walking tours, which was essentially, I hope this gives you a better view into our culture and it's not the way that it's portrayed in the media. And I just left blown away by it. So you're very safe, very amazing.
Yeah. Brad, you want to touch on Youssef? Craig referred to him. He was our guide and you took us on a walking tour. You were especially moved by his kind of final goodbye to us.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I got to spend a little time talking to him about his education and what he'd done. He had studied in England. I mean, he was he had a master's in journalism. He had 3 or 4, they all speak multiple languages over there. And he really stopped at the end of the tour and looked at us genuinely and said, I just really have to say thank you for taking the time out of your day, out of your busy lives to come and experience our culture. Because truly, we have a lot to offer and we are not as fanatical as people may come across or think we are. And we're just glad that we could share this with us. And, Craig hit on it. It really, really touched me as well. I mean, it was genuine. It wasn't, I didn't feel like it was a scripted.
Oh, no.
He meant it.
Yeah. And when when the owner of the riad took us across the alley to his other restaurant, he had like a little museum also in his shop. And he explained a lot of the small nuances about the religion itself and why things were a certain way. And the biggest thing was you take care of your guests and you take care of the people that are coming to your house. And I think we noticed that probably the whole time that they did. They took very good care of us. Mokhtar and all of his drivers. Oh my goodness. Those guys were amazing.
I know.
And answered every ridiculous question we had. We had millions of them, and her English was great. And, you know, when Mokhtar would get upset, he'd go right to French. And, you know, unless you understood French, you had no idea what he was swearing about or being upset about. But they were all just could not have been more caring and more helpful. You know, you guys know my daughter came with us, and her friend, Aaron's parents were a little bit nervous, her going until she found out. They thought she was just going here. It was her and Kimmy and some friends.
Ah, okay.
And so, you know, when they found out, well, you know, Kimmy's dad's going and a bunch of his friends that he's known for years, and you know, it's a tour, and that I think that settled them a little bit. They were still a little nervous, but the girls were hysterical. They were so fun the whole time. Talk about homework. They did a ton of homework.
They did. And it was really fun because we had this multi-generational tour, and they were just pure joy. Aaron and
Well said.
Kimmy were pure joy. They were delighted in everything. We loved it all, but they took it to a new level.
Well, how about shout out for the rooftop bar on day one?
Oh, the
For lunch,
pergola.
by the way.
There you
right?
go. What was
Yeah.
that?
It was called the pergola.
The
Yeah.
pergola.
Yeah, Kimmy and Aaron pulled that one out of their hat. Oh, that was
They did.
awesome.
That was before our tour began.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
I know.
It was
Yeah.
pre-tour.
Yeah,
It
that
was
was
pre-tour.
That
It was pre-tour.
Yeah.
But, you know, to jump back to this whole hospitality thing, I had heard already that Moroccans were very hospitable and they really cared about your well-being. And if you said you had a flat tire, it is incumbent upon them to find you a tire. It's just the way they think. So the riad. So I don't know if everyone understands really what a riad is. And it's an old house that has been made into a hotel. Anybody want to talk about the riad that we love so much?
I'm so glad you went there because I was like, we've mentioned it a couple times.
Yeah.
I personally absolutely fell in love with the Riyadh Kanitsa. I mean, the way the whole community is set up, it's about not being too auspicious. They don't want people to see who has more. It's all about equality. And so you walk up to these doors and you open it and you're entering a whole new world. So Riyadh, as we learned, means the garden.
Yeah.
And it's a different experience. You walk in, there's fresh flowers, there's a little waiting room. You don't check your bags. You don't wait in line. You don't show them that you're a Hyatt frequent diner. You go sit in a little room.
Yep.
And you wait for them to bring you tea.
And they bring you tea.
And they bring you tea wherever you go. There's tea ceremonies for everywhere.
Everywhere.
I mean, with Muhammad, with his generosity and his knowledge and the way the rooms were laid out, you know, Kimmy and Aaron, again, booked last minute, ended up in a suite that could have sat 12 of us easily. But just though I thought it was beautifully laid out. We ate breakfast on the roof every morning. I was very impressed with the Riyadh Kanitsa and just all the Riyads we stayed. I mean, you open that door and you've entered a whole new oasis.
Just amazing how beautiful they were inside. I mean, there's a pool and a garden and how, I mean, these buildings are hundreds and hundreds of years old, and you would have swore there were air conditioners in there, but really it was just the thickness of the walls and the way the buildings are designed to get that hot air out of there. And just completely, you know, like Brad said, when you walk through that door, every time you walk through one of those doors, you're not exactly sure what you're going to get.
No.
We did a whole bunch of them, and they were amazing. When you get inside, they were beautiful, and the tile and the woodwork and all the plaster work and you know, and just the people themselves wanting you to feel comfortable and it was incredible. Yeah, that Riyadh Nizza was beautiful. Those rooftop breakfasts, that was some of the best things we had in the whole trip.
Yeah. And the rose petals and the fountains and do you guys want to talk about the hammam?
You guys can go ahead.
Craig, you want to talk about the hammam because that is a thing in Morocco and it's like a spa, but it's not really a spa. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's so we've had massages and I didn't know what to expect. And you look at the scrub that they use, and I remember you and I going in and you undressed and she made sure that I didn't because that's their culture, right? and
That
probably
suit
better for
on,
everyone.
sir.
Yeah. And then, getting scrubbed down. I mean, it's gross, but the amount of dead skin that comes off of you is stunning. Right. And I think Brad and Troy had a different experience because they were greasy for a day. So we didn't get the oil, whatever it was, we didn't get it. But it was a good experience. But yeah, I can't imagine doing it every week. But
No, but people do every week.
I think
you guys
want to do it
wanna-
a couple times a week.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They're very clean people.
Thursday or Fridays, it's some mom day.
Yeah, it's home mom day.
Baby soft skin.
Yeah.
Brad kept going, feel my arm. It's just so soft. It was fun. It was fun, stepping out of our comfort zone and
way out.
Way out.
We had no idea what we're walking into on that.
No, we didn't. We didn't. But yeah.
Well, I'm walking around in the Medina too. I mean, a lot of it, when you see it and how just flat out busy it is, and everybody's just running at breakneck speed. Right. And so you expect that, and I think one of the funnest things is, I think it was one of the first days, maybe before the trip started, when we walked into the Medina right at taco cart or falafel cart setup time. And we come walking into that Medina, and here come all those carts on wheels, and there's 15 guys each shoving those things out to get their spot.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we couldn't have timed it any better. There must have been 50 or 60 of them at least.
Right.
And those guys going flat out, and it's like, get your cart set up, get the fire started, get the top up, get the tables out. I mean, it was, we're just looking around kind of in the whole center of it. It was amazing.
You don't know what it is exactly when it's happening. I was like, wait, what are they doing?
Yeah. And all of a sudden they start
stacks of
popping those teeth up.
It was crazy. And then that's when we saw the guy with the monkey.
We saw the guy with the snakes.
And the guy with the cobras.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, there were cobras, and they would do that.
And baklava.
And baklava. It was it still felt like a movie set every time I turned around. Yeah. It just felt like a movie set.
Especially when we did that tour where he walked us back to the shoe place, and that whole scene that was back in there. And those little alleys were tight, where they're making the metal, they're making the jewelry, they're making the shoes. They're hand making everything. And
correct me if I'm wrong. That's the souk, because that's where the craftsmen are.
Those were the suits. Yeah, that's correct.
And that's where the craftsmen are. And that was quite a remarkable experience for us. We're walking by and we're seeing the welders, and we're seeing the craftspeople sewing things. And then we went to the shoe. I don't know what you would call it. The shoe experience, the shoe guy. I don't know, but it was remarkable. Anybody want to take this one? And it's, golly.
I think you and Craig need to take this one. I mean, what you experience, the grandfather sitting in front of the shop, making the shoes while they're making stuff in the back, and they're custom making it, and they're going to deliver it, and he's offering. You need to tell this one, Suzanne.
I think what was interesting for me in that, so you all have touched on tea. Tea is such a part of their culture, right? And it's such a ceremony, as someone said earlier in this conversation. And when I look at the group of us converged on that store, everybody's buying shoes or the puffs that go in their house or whatever. And it was pointed out to me that the grandfather was the shoemaker.
Yeah.
And, should do something kind for him. So I gave him a tip, and he kissed me. Right. And it was amazing, because it's like, that's the gratitude in that culture. But, to have that and to hug, and then let me make you tea. And then they gave me a shoe to hold the tea because it was too hot to hold. Right. And just that whole experience. And it was like, hey, trust us. We'll have this to your hotel later tonight or tomorrow. And they delivered. Well, it was amazing. Right. So just the whole experience of those tight, confined quarters, and just the wanting to please and the gratitude. Amazing. Just amazing.
It was so fun for me. So imagine this, my listeners. There are walls and walls of colorful shoes. There are slides. There are loafers. There are sandals. And they're all made of different colors of leather. And I found these slides that I want. And I wanted them in black suede, and they had a little tassel on top. So they measure my foot, and then I tried on the shoe, and no, we're going to make them for you. And I'm thinking, well, we're going to leave here in a couple days, or we're leaving the next day, actually.
It was the next day.
And they're like, no, we'll bring them to your hotel. And I'm like, what? And everyone is having a ball, and they're so kind. And it wasn't like they were trying to get us to buy anything. It was like you wanted to. So then outside is sitting the older gentleman. So he's the craftsman who has now passed it down to his sons. And that's when the tea comes out. And the tea is so hot, we cannot hold. The tea there in Morocco is given to you in a small glass, like taller than a shot glass, kind of thinner and taller, usually embellished with gold. And it's mint, and it's delicious, sometimes very strong, other times not so strong. But it was super hot. So they had these little shoe-shaped koozies, right? Is that what they're called? Koozies?
That's exactly what they are.
Where you put the glass tea in there. But he was so sweet. And then I go kind of walking back in to kind of check on seeing what other people were buying and doing. And he brings me this bracelet. And I'm kind of looking at it, and he wanted to put it on me, not in a weird way, but in a sweet way. And so he gave me this bracelet, and I wore the bracelet, and it was magical. I don't even know how long we were there, but I was fully immersed in this experience.
And I think everybody was having a great time in there, and making it fun. And they were kind of showing us how they were made, and they were pulling seat belts apart for the thread. So there was a guy there was a guy that had a pile of old car seat belts. And they were pulling those apart because those threads are super
Very
heavy.
strong.
And that's
that's the guy who was making the poofs.
Yeah, that's the guy making the poofs. Yeah, making the poofs. So
those are also, for your edification, they are like leather, like footstool, or like you could use them as a footstool, but you could use them as a stool, and then you stuff them.
Yeah.
They were very cute. We went crazy buying poofs.
Some people went crazy.
Some people did. Karen bought like 6 or something like that.
Yes, she did.
I think she bought 6 and some shoes. So
yes, and some shoes.
she was having a great time.
Right.
Well, she had missed a couple days, so she was doing catch up.
Yeah. You did.
Making up for lost time.
Our group was so amazing. So I said that we had the young girls, and we had our friends, Karen and Dave, and then Cindy and her husband, and we just had an amazing group that just kind of maneuvered through everything really well. So we get in these Toyota Land Cruisers, and we head to the Sahara Desert, which for me, that was like, I was so excited. I thought this was the end all. But we had to start with buying our fabric for the shushes.
That's right.
Shush is this piece of, I think it's 4 meters long to be precise, and they wrap it around your head, and it's designed to keep the sun, sand, and wind off of you. And that's what the nomads wear. Does anyone want to add some more color to that?
Well, Mokhtar, who was the guide, he grew up as a Tuareg or a nomad. And also it turned out one of the other drivers, Lamine, had grew up in the last town at the end of the road before we went out into the sand. And those guys were country boys, and then Abdullah was the city boy as far as our main guides.
Right.
But just the stories and the way their lives started compared to where they are now was absolutely amazing, that those guys were able to come out of those deserts and adapt to city living. And maybe they haven't that much, but it sure seemed like it.
I felt the same way. Brad, what do you think about them?
Yeah, I mean, they were incredible. I mean, just the stories of where they've come and what they're doing and the business that they put together. And, to reference your point about the shush, the fact that you've got 12 people standing in a room, all picking colors and fabric, and none of us could figure out how to wrap it, except, of course, the younger girls who watched and paid attention. Correct. The rest of us were like third graders trying to figure out how to tie our shoes. Like, can you please put this back on my head again? And everyone's got their own color, and, what team are you on? And thinking, why am I doing this? And you realize then you get in the Sahara and it's windy and it's blowing. You want that on because of the dust and trying to keep it out of your face. But I got to tell you, as far as picture worthy, and I think I told you when I got back, there's a 6-pack of pictures with Brad on a camel in the Sahara. And here I am at Essaouira where they filmed Game of Thrones. And here's the Casbah where they filmed the Gladiator movies. And here I am with a chicken tagine that I ate 27 of. My cool factor was way up at the end of this trip. And I did bring my shush home. I brought my shush home.
You brought your shush home.
Yeah.
Yeah. We left ours for we left them for the maid service. But if you think about, Suzanne, you talked about the Land Cruisers. So we got these 3 where we go, if I remember right, there were 2 misfires on the camps they were trying to take us to. We'd pull into one. It's not, I don't even know how you tell from the sand dunes where you are, right?
Right.
But on the ride out, we stopped twice to look at water holes. And it didn't really impress upon me importance until after we left, which was, for the nomads who were traveling the desert, here's where the camels come and here's a source of water they can count on. And that was fascinating. But then to pull into the right camp and to see, like, when you walk out and there's these tents that we're going to stay in, that was the most amazing sight to see. And what really struck me too, the sand was different. Yeah. We're used to California beach as a kind of a light sand. It was a darkish brown, fine sand. Amazing, just the whole experience. But yeah, you talk Sahara Desert. Who can say they slept 2 nights in a tent in the Sahara?
Right. The other thing too was that when we first started heading out in the sand was we weren't the other people driving out there. There were people off to the right, couple hundred yards. There were people ahead of us. There were people behind us. So, that getting out there, that's like a daily operation for a lot of these people.
There's no roads.
No, there were just trails through the sand and through the desert, and trying not to hit the camels or the sheep or the goats or whoever's out there, or the guys, all the shepherds out there. But those guys. Thank goodness we had those guys.
Well, that's it. And, it's interesting. I recently wrote a piece for my Substack, and I talked about Mokhtar and having our conversations with him. He grew up as a nomad at as early as 5 years old. He was in charge of the goats.
Right.
And it was all about the goats. And it sounds like I'm poking fun, but I'm not. He was dead serious about it. And he talked about his mother, and one of their big pressures was to have the dinner ready by the time the sun would go down, and whether or not the fire would stay lit all night. These are things. We grew up in Southern California in this cushy existence compared to what he grew up. But how fun that our worlds were colliding with each other.
Yeah.
So amazing that those guys have figured out, what really works, to get people in and again, let's get back to the whole thing, making us feel comfortable, making us feel safe. And, the crazy music we were listening to on the radio.
Gosh.
And,
Lamin and his music.
And Mokhtar's music was really trippy.
Was it?
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah. And to Troy's point, even though we saw other people out there in this area, which I was kind of surprised about.
Yeah.
We walked on sand dunes that it was our footprints. That no one had, where we were walking there, it was just our footprints going up some of these sand dunes, and, doing a sunrise and a sunset and watching the camels walk across. You're like, almost, again, we're looking at each other like, where are we? What is going on? It was the stars at night. And then these guys who have driven us and cooked for us and made these meals, now they feel inclined that they're going to give us a show. So, they're not trained, but they gave us their history and, some of the songs that they've grown up with. And Again, the hospitality was unmatched.
It was, and it was, the sand was so clean. Mokhtar said that he used to clean their dishes with sand because the sand was so clean. And there's just so many things that I just couldn't even wrap my head around.
We did make bread in the sand, Susan.
I was going to say, you got to get to the bread.
Talk about making
I don't know how clean that sand was.
Well, there was camel dung next to the bread.
Got pictures of it. Yeah, we ate seasoned dung bread. Yes.
That was a phenomenal. So was that our second ride or our first ride?
I think that was the first main ride.
I think you're right.
Mhm.
It was the first ride, and we rode a good hour. We were like ready to get off the camels.
At least.
And so we get off at an oasis, and they made us lunch. But besides that, anybody want to talk about the bread making? I thought that was phenomenal.
I think, you look at gathering of the wood.
Oh, yeah.
You're looking for the dead wood, and then the guy building the fire tells you that's the wrong wood, right? So
there's Craig with his wood.
We don't want twigs that start a fire. We want serious pieces of wood. But I mean, they create the fire, they bury the embers so that it kind of creates an oven in the sand. We laugh, but there were camel droppings all around where the breads went in. All 10 of us made our bread and slowly cooked them, one by one, and turned into loaves, which bread is with every meal. It's a big part of their culture. But I mean, amazing experience they can do that. But back to the hospitality, the 3 guys that were driving us, and the 2 that worked, part of this lunch, just going out of their way to make an incredible spread. And what's interesting is too, they didn't want to join us ever, right? There's just that respect. And I feel bad about that. I wish we had incorporated more, because it was fascinating talking to these guys, but it was a blast to make bread in the desert.
Yeah.
Amazing. In the sand.
They were super interesting. And again, and I'll keep coming back to it because I thought it was, again, the hospitality. While we're gathering wood, there's one of the gentlemen who's taken the small embers and he's making tea. He's making tea in the middle of the Sahara on his own coals and making it to the traditional way, pouring it back and forth because you don't want to mix the tea. You don't want to bruise the leaves. You have to mix it back and forth. There's just such an art to it.
Yep.
And it was part of everything we did. I mean, it was you think, again, you're in the middle of an oasis. You're about to make bread by hand and bury it in the sand. And this guy's making tea over there the old traditional way. It's very
amazing.
Well, it's true. And then you've got another guy making you chicken shish kebabs, and he's made another fire. We don't have electricity. We don't have running water.
No.
And
Phenomenal.
not only that, but they set up the tent and they had places for us to, stuff for us to eat on. And they, they started pulling stuff out of the back of those vans and camp set up. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. That was a crazy couple days.
It was. And then we traveled back to the camp. And then I think it was that day that we went up. We took we took the camels. I mean, it's just so weird to even say that. We took another camel ride.
For a sunset ride.
For the sunset ride. Exactly. Who does that?
Yeah, it was so cool. That was so
gin and
cool.
tonics. Oh, we should talk about that. That's funny. So you're not really supposed to have alcohol, but they can't transport the alcohol, but it's okay if we drank it in the desert camps.
And I think it was as long as it was in our bags.
Yeah, it was in our bags.
Couldn't be in boxes. It couldn't be. I think if it was our own personal alcohol, we could do it.
Although conveniently, there were liquor stores before you went into the desert, so you could go get what you needed. Right.
And
luckily, yes.
And they knew the owners of those liquor stores. So it's all.
Oh, yeah. Everybody. That was.
Everybody's a cousin. Everybody knows everybody.
Everybody's a cousin. Yeah, for sure.
So, go ahead, Suzanne.
No.
I was just going to say that one of the parts that we in talking about was the drive that we did over to the Sahara, the fact that we drove through the Atlas Mountains, and there's all these small little villages the entire way along these rivers and everything, and they all look the same. They've all got the same architecture, what they've built. We learned about Casbahs and what that means. We got to see walk through one and see the town. And I'm going to surface this one up as a slow pitch to someone else who wants to talk about chicken tagine. But all I'll say is that by the time we had left, And coming back over the Atlas Mountain the second time, I kind of insisted we stop for pizza. So if anyone wants to talk about chicken tagine, I'll serve that one up to you guys.
Oh, I was looking forward to it. But I think we had it twice a day.
Yeah.
Every day.
For
Every
4
day.
or 5 days.
They were different versions.
Different versions, different. Yeah. I think the one place we actually stopped for lunch, I think it was actually in the middle of our first stretch going out to the Sahara. They actually had like beef or something.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, "What is that?" That's not chicken. I don't know what that is, but I'm having that.
Well, interestingly, go ahead.
I think it's a cultural thing. I think the vegetables are like a sacred combination. And I think that is literally, because of their culture, that is what you eat.
Right.
That's what you can get pretty regularly. And I think the chickens are way easier to grow than anything else. So I know that probably has a lot to do with it.
That's true.
It was good.
Couscous.
But it was a lot of it and a lot of food. Amazing.
It was a lot of food. We
Oh
had plenty of food and like 5 kinds of bread, and it was amazing. But to jump back to finish the whole cocktail thing, we didn't do a ton of drinking while we were there. We had some wine, we had, some cocktails. It wasn't like a super boozy kind of experience, but it was fun to have, to be in the Sahara Desert and have a gin and tonic. Well, so we can't drink the ice. There is no ice actually in the Sahara Desert, right? So we had to have gin and tonics with no ice. But Trina had forgot about Trina and Den. We didn't talk about them. They're from the East Coast. We went to Africa with them. And so I sent them the email too and said, "Hey, do you want to ride camels with us in the desert?" And she's like, "We're in." But she actually bought a lime next to the liquor store, in the liquor store. So we did have gin and tonic, no ice with lime, but it was still absolutely delicious.
I think that one of those lunches, they snuck in a pasta, and I think every one of us devoured it.
That's
right. Right. And if you didn't go quickly, there wasn't enough marinara sauce, but it didn't matter. Just give me the noodles were fine.
Yeah.
The other thing I do remember about the lime is I'm not sure the utensil Craig was given, but he did make sure that lime was dead before it went into the gin and tonic.
It was like a plastic food. I don't know what it was, but you massacred it.
I'll tell you, you say we couldn't drink or chew the ice or have it melt in your drink.
Yeah.
What was interesting is clearly some of us had some stuff melt in our drinks because there was a lot of tummy issues going on. But
we did.
We had the infirmed car, and as we were leaving the desert, we stopped to get more supplies, 7-Up for people to feel better. Uh-huh. And fortunately, I felt fine. I went next door, invited in for tea. And you can only describe this setting as like, think all the things you can buy in Costco stuffed in a 20 by 20 room. And you go under this little archway into the storeroom among the boxes, and there they've laid out the tea. And they got the little Bunsen burner, and they're firing it up there. And it's just all about, I know the owner of the store. We'll go next door and have tea with him. All back to the culture, which is just amazing, just incredible.
We sat on overturned laundry baskets.
Right.
Yeah.
And they couldn't have been more hospitable. It was like,
right.
We're next door in the convenience store buying snacks or whatever from a cousin. And someone says, he would like to invite you for tea next door. And we're like, sure. We don't know what we're walking into. You walk through the washers and dryers and other accoutrements for laundry into the back room and sit on an overturned, they're all sitting out there for us. It was precious.
Yeah.
We drank the tea and thanked them, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it was.
So back to your point about it was like a movie set. So I took a picture. I remember when you guys were back there having the tea. I passed on tea that day.
Yes.
Which was weird because I loved the tea whole thing. But I took a picture down the street, and I've shared that with a number of people who all said, was that a set from Star Wars? I mean, it looked like a movie set again. I'm like, no, this is
Right.
where we stood. This is the town, what was called Muhammad,
Yeah.
MHM. And it's just a picture down the street, and it looked like something out of a Star Wars movie. Everything
Yeah.
really cool.
It was so desolate, and just a few buildings, and it was remarkable. We did make it to the coast, unless I've forgotten a story along the way. There's so many, you guys. I mean, I don't even know. Make sure that we cover. Where do we?
I think it took us 2 days to get out to the sand and
Correct.
to get back, and we stopped in between
Yeah.
a couple different times and saw some amazing stuff. The tour, we went to the Gladiator movie place where we walked across a riverbed, and
1,000-year-old buildings. I mean,
Yeah.
it was
crazy. I mean, amazing.
crazy amazing. We went to the date. We went to the date farm. We
Gate
saw
farm.
lots of animals on the side of the road. We saw goats. We saw sheep. We did. They had cow crossing signs, but we never saw any cows. I don't know where the cows were.
Yeah, I think they were making it up.
They're
we
just
did a
happy they're not
cooking
chickens.
class. We talked about the tagine, but I don't know if everybody knows what a tagine was. We were talking about this last night at our house because we came home with these little clay individual tagines that we can cook our chicken tagine in. And Alex, our daughter, didn't know what a tagine was. And
Oh,
so
really?
it's like it's like a cone on a tray of ceramics, and you put it on the stove or in the oven, and you cook your chicken with your spices and your different things. And so then the steam kind of goes around in this conical shaped
Yeah,
ceramic
and it heats it
cloche,
up
kind of like
fast.
a cloche.
Totally heats it up fast.
Yeah, it was
Very
cool.
good way to cook.
That was fun. That was fun doing the cooking class.
The
Also,
cooking class was
fun.
really
The
cool.
cooking class. Yeah,
One
that
of my
was
favorite tagines.
Did
That was
everyone's tagines make it home in one piece?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did
what-
anybody's break?
No,
Mine did.
No,
There you
No,
go.
ours was great.
Yeah.
So
One
one
of
more
my-
thing before we get to the coast, just
Yes.
because I thought it was the fact that we went through Marrakech and all the souks and everything we went, that again, culture-wise, I've never seen more cats in my entire life. Cats on motorcycles, cats in doorways, cats everywhere. In the Medina, that's the walled part of the city, dogs are preferred to be outside of the main part of the city, but you get used to the fact that there's just cats everywhere. It kind of blew me away. I did not
everywhere.
know that. I didn't see that coming.
No.
So-
Considering how allergic two of you are, I can see where it would stand out.
I
Yeah.
mean, the fact that the cats would then sit on our laps or walk across our plates. Yeah.
Keep dragging their tails on our feet.
And Troy loves cats, so it was just a treat for him.
Quite eventful.
Yeah, so we aren't touching on every single adventure, but we're giving the gist of it. Before we end with Essaouira, or they call it Suera.
But
Do you think this kind of trip is for everyone, or do you think? I just don't. I think it's just for someone who really wants to kind of step out of their comfort zone.
well, you're going. First of all, you're going. You're doing it's 3 continents to get over.
Yeah.
And you have to be we're just going to see how this goes, because you are going so far.
Mm-hmm.
And, everybody knows the airline industry's been struggling the last 5 or so years. And you're going to Africa, which, again, now that's a whole new, at least for me, was definitely a new experience flying in. But I think that, your expectations, I think that you're going to have to just kind of go with it. If you're expecting a certain thing, I'm going to stay at these top places and all that. I mean, I guess you could do that kind of trip, but you would miss all of the amazing people and places we saw. I bet you there's people that go there and maybe never even go in the Medina, go and not go see the souks and not have coffee. Remember the girls found that little coffee place?
No.
I mean, it was like had 6 tables, and I'm small tables. And I think if you're a person that makes you nervous, taking that chance to go, that maybe this would not be, maybe the best thing for you. But if you think that you would like an adventure, this was adventure with a capital A for sure for me.
Brad?
Yeah, I totally agree. I have, a luggage tag that you gave me on my bags that say find adventure. And you've got to really be that kind of person. Yeah, as you know, I offered it to my wife. I offered it to my mom and my brother and his wife if they wanted to go. And it just wasn't on their list. And you guys know, you've traveled with my wife before. I mean, she's not an adventure eater and she doesn't want to step out. She's got her comfort zone. She asked if there was a theme park in Morocco. I said no. That's sort of took care of it.
No Disney.
There's no theme park there. But yeah, I mean, if you're willing to be able to be flexible and you love embracing culture and making connections, because that's what it is. I mean, you want to get out and meet the people and see what it's like. And the stories we heard from Mukhtar about, I mean, it was really, really special. But for everybody, no, you really want to have that right group of people. And it was nice to be able to put a group of people together who all kind of traveled the same way.
Craig?
Yeah, so I agree with what you all have said, but Suzanne, I have a different approach than what you said. I think you have to go do things to overcome those hesitations. I think back in the fall when you and I were in Buenos Aires, and there was an older woman who was single and afraid of everything. And being in a small group of 10 or 12 of us who all watched out for her, she overcame a lot. And I think there's an amazing big world out there. And look, I'm petrified of snakes, but seeing the snake charmer, I was just captivated by watching that for a bit. And I think if you don't step out of your comfort, you won't see these kinds of things that we get to see. And so I feel lucky that we have the opportunity to, and I appreciate what we learn out of all this. It changes us every time. It evolves us every time.
Right.
Well said.
I don't disagree. I don't know that everyone wants the adventure, and that's fine. I respect everyone and their travel limitations or not.
But it's interesting too. Brad said something. Morocco wasn't number one on anybody's list, not mine.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think when you and Cindy sat down and talked about, okay, what could we do that would be an intersection of interests?
Mm-hmm.
I think in the way that you positioned it, we all jumped at it. But no, it wasn't even on my top 10, right? Because I didn't know any better. I didn't know enough about it to have it there. I would now say, with the knowledge I have, it should be in everybody's top 5. I mean, there's areas of that country we didn't get to see. So this will come out bad, but everyone told us, don't go to Casablanca. You're not missing anything. Okay, got that. But you start to think of the capital cities and more of the coast. I just think there's a lot to see. So no, I would say open up your perspective, and I think you grow from it.
Yeah, I did find it very interesting, the fact that there's some very well-traveled people that went on this trip, and none of us had been to Morocco.
Right. Nor was it on anyone's list.
No, on anybody's list. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm going to jump back to Essaouira, and then we've already been talking 45 minutes, which is pretty remarkable. It was beautiful. It was charming. It was blue. It was a fishing village. It was also a movie set, and Game of Thrones was filmed there in several different locations. I loved that kind of finale of riding the camels on the sand. I just thought that was just the coolest thing.
He had cannons.
And cannons.
He had cannons.
Lots of cannons.
Lots of cannons. Right outside our window.
That's right. See, I didn't get to see out your window.
Oh,
so
man,
you had a view of the ocean and the cannons?
Yep. Right outside.
So cool.
So awesome. It was just, that was actually for me, was a surprise how much I liked that town.
Yeah, me
and
too.
I loved the setup and just right on that rocky coast and the fishing port right there, and getting to see those guys bringing their catch in and eating the fish right out of the little stalls there. That was, for me, it was a highlight for me.
Yeah.
It had a completely different vibe. I mean, it wasn't as crazy in the Medina. That wasn't as big and overwhelming, but it had a whole different feel to it when you'd walk around. And one of the things I'd love to share is the fact that some of the things that Cindy gave us access to, and one of them was there with Allison, where we went to her cooking school, and it was her name of her company. It's what she does is ancestral cooking. And what she's done is pulled stories from grandmothers and brought that culture back and being able to share it. And that she took us to an apothecary in herbs and spices where I learned stuff and had exposure to things that I never was familiar with. Euphorbia honey and these different things that the spices and the 37 spices that make up this tagine special flavoring. It was really special to have that sort of interaction. And this was a British woman who had relocated there, I don't know how long ago.
A while ago. Yeah.
The fact that she was embracing the culture and teaching people where it comes from, what it means. And again, going down this alley and ended up in this little tiny Harry Potter apothecary store where we're trying and sampling
jars and pots all over the place.
Yeah, it was, again, I fully invested in my honey. I don't know if you guys have been using it, but after every trip, I come home and take my Euphorbia honey. So I'm strong like both.
I
How
think
you, Craig?
that town, as Brad said, the Medina was more accessible, but the town was incorporated ocean, which we hadn't had.
Right.
And I think it was beautiful. We have to comment on the fact that where we stayed was like a New Orleans brothel style, right? It was crazy.
It was wild and fun.
It was.
Fun.
And you look at the way that it was set up, and you look at the waiters, that you walked in on one going to the bathroom, and right, and the bartenders dancing with people at 10, and I mean the whole vibe was just so different than what.
That whole rooftop, that bar and that restaurant up there, that was right on the water there, and just the views and just the whole setup. That was a really great, amazing way to finish our week up, being out there for a couple of days. I think we all commented that we wish we had at least one more full day.
Yeah.
There, because we were really enjoying it. The girls were running around like crazy. They really covered a lot of ground in that town.
Yeah, it was great.
It was colorful, and the tile and the fabrics, and a British woman owns the hotel and had renovated it fully. I mean, Cindy really did her homework. That was
really
super cool experience. We're joking about the, New Orleans brothel, but it was just vibrant.
Yeah, I don't think we're joking. I think that's exactly what
some of the artwork on the walls was a little.
I say that with all due respect.
But it was great, and the food was great, and we were looking out at the ocean, and the wind is blowing, and there were palapas, and it was just awesome.
Incredible. And we had fish. We could actually have fish for dinner.
We ate oysters right out of
oysters. We did. We ate oysters right from the boat. That was so it was so cool. Well, there was no one I would rather have done that trip with than you guys, and you guys just made it awesome. You're always so optimistic and and you want to do this, sure, and I just can't thank you enough for being such great partners in this and coming on here and talking about the details. It was really remarkable.
It was an incredible adventure for me, and like I said, Kimmy and Aaron had the most amazing time. I mean, they're just, they came back. I think Kimmy took 1,800 pictures, 2,000 pictures. I think Aaron took another 1,000, just those.
Yeah.
And, all their peekaboo shots and all the really silly things that they do. You can't imagine they're 30 something years old. And
I know, but they're
running around like a couple of 10-year-olds. They were having such a good time. They were having such a great time.
They were a hoot. They had a great time, and they were up for anything. And Suzanne, I couldn't tell you again, we've traveled together. We've known each other forever. Don't take this for granted. As I've said before, we're very blessed that we get to keep doing this, that we'll keep doing it, that the memories we've made, and that look forward to the next one we are able to put together. So
I'll say this, Troy, you said at one point, I've never been this far from home. Right. And I loved that.
For sure.
And
I think we were 20 miles from Algeria.
Yeah, we were.
Right. Yeah.
Or we were out in the sand.
But the four of us looked at each other often and said, can you believe this?
Yeah.
Right. And it was wild. But Suzanne, I think this too, you and I were fortunate enough to go to Botswana and Zimbabwe a year ago. And as that African adventure, we went to see the animals. I think for me, with the camels and the old cities were the draw, but both trips you walk away from being blown away by the people. And they're very different cultures.
Yeah.
Southern Africa to Northern, right? Very different, but in both cases, amazed by the people and the hospitality and the wanting to please. And I just think that was great. So the question is, what's next? So we got to plan something.
I don't know. This is pretty hard to top.
Pretty hard to top. I think we got a couple irons in the fire.
We do. Well, I appreciate Cindy putting this together for us because we never could have done this ourselves. And I love the small group.
Yep.
Small group tour. Small groups are great.
And we love Peter.
Peter was great.
We love Peter.
Yeah, Peter was amazing.
Peter was fantastic.
Peter was amazing.
Peter is Cindy's husband, and he did so much for us as well. He was a great asset to the group too. So, but anywho, thank you guys. Thank you again for coming on and talking about this on Travel Connections. And I hope to have you back another time talking about a different adventure.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Sounds great.
Guys, thanks again for everything. Thanks for
Thanks for pulling us together.
Thank you.
I love you guys. We'll see you soon.
Love you. Okay.
Love you, man.